Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Keep the Line Moving, the podcast designed to talk about leadership, life, and inspiration. I am your host, Chris Gargano. And Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year 2024. Let's make this great. This is episode 1 of season 2 on this podcast. Overall, episode 52. I thought it would be a great idea to level set. Let's reestablish our collective goals. Let's give a little information as to the origin and the why of this podcast. And I'll reintroduce myself to you because there's new listeners, right? I welcome you. Let's do this together. Let's learn, let's grow, and have a good time in the process. Okay, I'm going to tell you my story based on 3 elements that pertain directly to the mission of the podcast: curiosity, storytelling, and self-awareness. Here we go. In 1990, I graduated from St. Mary's College of California with a degree in communications. The first 12 years of my career were spent as a sports reporter anchor all over the country in various markets, including St. Louis, Portland, Oregon, the San Francisco Bay Area, to name a few, right? My job on a daily basis was to show that curiosity and storytelling every day, telling the stories of great athletes that overcame adversity, athletes at all different levels: NCAA, NHL, Major League Baseball, all over. It did not matter. The NBA, LPGA, WNBA, great amateurs all over the sports mosaic. My job was to tell their stories, but not just on a surface level. What made them great? What was their work ethic? What was their self-awareness to understand, hey, I need to work on hitting the curveball, or I'm unable to throw that 40-yard out. How do I get better? And then, of course, it was also stories on coaches, administrators, front office execs. I would sit down with these folks and dive into their core. What made them great? What were their challenges? And when you do this thousands of times, you start to understand there's a formula. There's a way in which people excel, and there's a commonality there. In dealing with adversity and failure is part of this equation. Again, back to curiosity, storytelling, and self-awareness. So then my career made a switch, a catalyst, a change. I went from being on the air and doing that reporting to behind the scenes as an executive producer, and I was fortunate to oversee the content units of the Oakland Raiders, San Francisco Giants, and the New York Jets. And throughout that time in leadership, we won awards in content and Tellys and Emmys and other such awards with incredibly talented people that I was fortunate to work with. But now I was part of the leadership culture of those franchises. So there's that self-awareness. How was I leading? Was I there enough for people? What could I have said then? How could I have been a better leader? So I said to myself, hey, you need to get better. So I went back and got a master's degree in leadership studies at St. Mary's, and I graduated in the summer of 2016. From that moment on, I was inspired to consume and learn everything about leadership that I could as a human being, studying it, reading about it, listening to podcasts, asking questions, continuing that curiosity, storytelling, and that self-awareness. What were my blind spots and how could I best deal with them? Then I was fortunate to become an adjunct professor at NYU in 2018, teaching leadership to college students. What a gift this has been. I get to understand their perspectives, how they see the work world today. What is their view on culture? What is their view on self-awareness and communicating? And how does a college senior who's about to graduate deal with the multi-generations in a workplace? That is what we talk about. Their input to me has been a gift. I thank each and every one of those students that I've been fortunate to teach for the last 6+ years. So that brings us to where we are today. The Keep the Line Moving podcast is designed to have conversation, curiosity, storytelling, and self-awareness with great leaders and people who have overcome adversity. Everyone from CEOs to professional baseball players, to coaches, to administrators, to front office execs, in and out of sports, so you can get value, so you can hear their stories, so you can have useful information for your journey. That is why I shared all this with you. What is the origin? Why should you care? And how can this help you? And hopefully you agree that these conversations in 2024, or if you go back and listen to all the episodes in 2023, they provide you value and they entertain you. and they inspire you, or however it is for you. That is the goal. And this goal with this podcast, in addition to my company, the Gargano Leadership Group, is to provide emerging leaders and others value. All right. Now, for episode 1 of season 2, our guest, he's actually the guest host. He has a lot of experience in this. He's the team reporter producer for the New York Jets out of Syracuse University. Ethan Greenberg has been with the Jets for 8 years. He's part of that incredibly talented group that I worked with at the Jets. I miss them. They're fantastic. And here is Ethan. You will see his talent. I hope you enjoy this and get value. And thank you, everyone, for being part of Keep the Line Moving. All right, Ethan, take it away.
Happy New Year, Gargs.
Happy New Year, Ethan. This is fantastic. I'm so thankful we're doing this to start the year the right way, Ethan.
I could not be more appreciative of this opportunity to do it, but I think this is fun because this is the time of year where it's like New Year's resolutions, and obviously a lot of them are self-based, whether that's lose weight, go to the gym more, be better at XYZ, and I think that this is going to be a lot of fun. If you're ready to roll, I'm going to hit you with the first question. I think anyone that's listening to this, that's followed you and the podcast, and has just followed your career as a friend of yours, a family member of yours, if they were catching up with you after 1 year of doing what you've been doing on your own, their first question, which is going to be this first question, is, are you happy with your decision to leave the sports world as a content leader, and do you regret that decision?
No, I'm very happy. And thanks for the question. That's a great question. Ethan, I'm very happy that I made the decision. It has been a challenging, fun, and rewarding year, but I'm very happy with the decision. I love doing this. I love waking up every day. It is bombarded with challenge. You know, the industry that I'm in, which is to help people in the consulting space, but I love it. I am very happy. I appreciated, enjoyed, you know it as a close friend of mine,
Right.
how much I loved being in the content space all those years with the Raiders, Giants, Jets, and before that. But it was time to do this, to try to guide people as they lead and they emerge as leaders. That is what I love doing.
And I think that was always tangible when you were with the Jets. So this is a harder hitting question, but I think it's an important one. When you work at the Jets, you get to lead a department, you get to see everybody on a day-to-day basis, me included. Like I've told you this multiple times. I feel very lucky that I got to share a workspace with you. I could walk, a couple feet from my desk to your office, ask you a question. I have grown as a leader exponentially as a person because of you. But when you're in the space that you're in now, you don't necessarily have the same time as 7 years when you go consulting or you go talk to a person, a potential client, whatever the case may be. How do you balance a larger outreach, but maybe not necessarily as much time as you want to help that individual person?
So this is a great question, and thank you very much for the kind words. And I did love when you popped in the office and we would have theoretical, practical, and everything in between types of conversations, and very personal at times. So I really appreciate that. And I would be lying to you if I said I didn't miss that. I do miss the daily interactions of being in an office amongst teammates and going in the same direction, and all being part of something greater than yourself, being as part of a team. I do miss that. So what do I do to answer your question directly? So what I do, Ethan, is I have to connect quicker, right? So how do you do that? Well, when you're self-aware, which are some of the principles that I consult about, you realize that, okay, I'm pretty decent at connecting with folks. I always have been, humbly speaking, but you have to be aware of what you're good at, right? And one of those things is the ability to connect with individuals. I like to ask questions. So if I'm in an elevator with somebody or standing in lines at Starbucks, Ethan, I will give you an example of connecting. The other day, there was a long line at the coffee shop. And I said, this line reminds me of Disneyland. That's all I said. Not to anyone in general, just so an earshot of a couple of folks. A very nice woman to my left who had been buried deep in her phone and whatever she was doing, no judgment, looked up and said, oh my gosh, that reminds me of when I had my daughters in strollers and we had the fast pass. I even forgot about fast passes that we would go, right in, and we loved that so much. Oh my gosh, you just triggered a memory. The woman to my right, who was probably, this woman here was a little bit older, obviously with children. The woman to my right was 20 something. And she said, oh my gosh, Disneyland. I remember the Haunted Mansion. 2 conversations, 2 exchanges that I otherwise wouldn't have had. So where am I going with this? So when I'm consulting with someone I've never met before, I dive into who they are quickly because I
Right.
love to learn about them so I can guide them. So that's an anecdote. Now, I don't ask my clients, what it was like at Disneyland. I will say, what is your leadership philosophy? How do you communicate? What is your philosophy of listening? Are you empathetic? I get them self-aware as quickly as possible through conversation and curiosity. Hope that answers your question.
It does. It does. I think that there's a couple things that I have follow-ups to. First of all, we're people, or like, it's like a people's person, right? Or like a player's coach. We are people's people.
Yes,
So
you are too, without a doubt.
thank you. Going off of what you said though, like obviously what you just described in terms of like potential clients, that is your first interaction with that person. Like if I had never met you, you would just describe like what is the process that we go through. How many meetings do you feel like it takes to get one, an understanding of the person, two, that person's works and leadership style, and three, and I think most importantly, especially for the field that you're in, how long does it take on average in your experience over this last year to feel like you've made a difference for that person and that workspace?
So it varies, but in a general sense, here's the key to this. When consulting or coaching, in what I have learned in the last year, and quite frankly, if you break it down, I've been consulting and coaching my entire career. And so how long does it take? So you have a workshop. It's a 90-minute workshop. People like to be listened to. They like to be asked questions. They like to be asked about leadership and about their personal philosophies. Most likely, they have not been asked these types of questions before. So they engage in an open way because they could see that everyone else is participating. And those little pockets of vulnerability brings out more in folks. So when you're asking people deeper questions about their leadership or about their philosophy of listening, how they like to communicate in meetings, how do they go about having difficult conversations, and when we're having a round table discussion on that, folks are open to listening because they're learning at an accelerated pace. And so what I am is the facilitator and someone who cares and is gentle with them, not in a placating or an enabling way, but in a way that allows them to express themselves. I'll back off a little bit, make some room for them, and I'll encourage others to make room, pause, listen. And then when that environment of safety is created, folks can share, and you get to know people pretty deeply, Ethan, in a very quick time when they're sharing like that. But it's all a process. We don't just jump right in. We get to know people. We establish a connection, and then we migrate into what is the meat of it all.
Right. I think that leads me to my next question is obviously leadership in general, time on task, the better you know somebody, the more that you can help that person. I think that's just not even leadership, just like generally speaking. But going into this venture, what were your expectations for your first year, like as essentially running your own company? And do you feel like you've met them?
My expectations were to learn and grow. Now I'm saying that with the rear view mirror, right, approach, looking back, because that's exactly what's happened. A ton of learning and a ton of growing. What I wanted to do was establish a foundation. But I'm going to be honest with you, Ethan, I had no idea how challenging it would be to learn the space, learn what it meant to relate to clients, to line up clients, to do the business side of consulting, the business side of coaching. That is a process. Eventually, as the months, accumulated, I became more and more patient with myself in that learning. And I don't want to bore people with the business of it, but being an entrepreneur, and I got into this at age 54, right? I'm 55 now. I'm open about that. I had a wonderful career leading up to it, but I had to do a lot of new learning. And that has been very enlightening and it has inspired me. But the learning has been challenging. The learning has been difficult at times, but I love where I am. Right now, it took about the 10-month period. So ask me a couple months ago, I don't even know if I would have agreed to do this, Ethan. But now I feel like I have momentum and I feel like I'm an established company and brand that I could stand behind. And it's not just me. I have folks that work with me. You met Savin the other day. She's fantastic. Jack, Paul, I mean, it's just, I've been very fortunate to have some great help throughout the year.
Right. And I think that it's all kind of intertwined. What you just said about loving the people, but not necessarily missing like the sports day-to-day aspect of it, even though you grew up watching, playing sports. Do you find this line of work, Gargs, more fulfilling than being an executive in a content department?
Yes, I do. Because here's why. John Elway, when he retired from the Denver Broncos, he equated it to graduating from high school, college. It was just another graduation in his life. I love that. And that's how I felt with leaving the sports world in that regard. It was a graduation, it was time. And you're thriving at the Jets. You guys are thriving, doing incredible work that I couldn't be more proud of, just as a former colleague and somebody who was part of the journey for a while. The point is, I'm enjoying myself. You are doing wonderful work. So everybody's happy. And yes, I am very, very content and happy with the decision that was made. And I'm giving this a whirl, Ethan. Let's rock. Let's roll. I'm going for the next decade.
Well, I think that even when we crossed paths for 7 years, you could tell that you were most passionate about helping the people. And yeah, I think that's exactly where, or exactly is why you are now where you are. Because obviously the content stuff aside, like you had done it for decades before coming to the Jets, but you could really tell, Chris Gargano is Italian. When the hands start moving is when the people were in the office and you were trying to help them as people within their jobs, within leadership structure, or just like in day-to-day stuff. So I think that that's tangible. That's why you're exactly where you are now. But also given the fact that this is January 2nd, 2024, we talked about New Year's resolutions. I'm going to give you the opportunity for a little, I guess, entrepreneurial resolution here. You've done this for a year now, year plus. In year two, what's being carried over that you liked from year one, and what's, without giving away state secrets, what approaches from you are being changed?
What I really have enjoyed, and I didn't realize how much I would enjoy it, is doing this podcast. Ethan, I love doing it. I love it. I love the guests. I love, like, I did one today, a pre-screening of an upcoming guest, and she and I were talking. I could not wait. I said, I wish I would have recorded what you just said. She was incredible. And I had an email exchange with another woman who's going to be on, and she's all excited. And it's when they come on and they answer these questions and we have this round conversation, and I could tell that someone out there listening is finding this useful, not in an academic sense, not in I'm sitting there taking notes, but if they do, that's great. But Ethan, I know we're making a difference. There's nuggets of information about listening or leadership or inspiration or how they went through a challenge and then overcame adversity. And there's someone driving, 25-year-old, 38-year-old, doesn't matter. And they're all, hey, that is what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm going to take their advice on difficult conversations and bring it into my one-on-one tomorrow. Do you know what that is? That's my nirvana, my ability to get people to talk about this. You know this to be true. This is how I used to talk. And
yeah, the hands are moving.
The hands are moving because I know that this podcast inspires and helps people. It's going to grow. It's going to get bigger. I could feel it. And it's not about like celebrity guests or things, although we've had those. It's about value. It's about providing value. So to answer your question, even in a more direct way, what am I going to change from 2023 to 2024? It's that. Be clear about the value that I provide clients, prospective clients and current clients, and getting over that, that I have to self-promote certain things. I got to get over that and just do it. Here's who I've helped. Here's how I've helped them. Here's how I can help you. And whether that's the word help or guide or develop or teach or mentor, whatever that may be for that respective client, is what I'm going to do in 2024.
If I were a prospective client and you telling me this is what I offer, this is why it's important, and let's go to work, like what's the elevator pitch?
The elevator pitch is this. Everybody needs help with leadership. Whether you're 22, 32, 52, everybody does. If someone had told me when I started leading at the Oakland Raiders in the early 2000s that I could have someone riding shotgun with me, I would have said, where do I sign up? You don't know, we don't know I'm not being judgmental here. We don't know what we don't know in the space. Meaning, how can I listen better? How can I communicate more clearly? Am I providing space for that person? Not everyone is the same. We cannot lead in one way. We have to lead specific to how this person takes in information. Well, before you do any of that external work, you have to do internal work. You have to know what you stand for as a leader. What is your personal leadership philosophy? Why does it matter? What are your values? What are you going to stand for when three people come into your office with a major problem? Are you going to panic and simply try to solve the problem? Or are you going to have the wherewithal and the self-awareness to calm down, calm the situation, and think strategically? That takes work. That takes real work. How do I handle things when things are not going my way? How do I channel calm? How do I channel an appropriate way of talking to this person who may not think like me, who may not look like me, who may not believe the same? That is what I talk to people about. I dive into their core, give them tools with self-awareness. What are their values, their personal leadership philosophy, why it matters to care about people and care about the organizational mission. And then leadership is also about getting things done. It's not just about sitting around and being philosophical all day. It's about how do all these elements that I just talked about help to get the work done. And
Right.
so that's what we did at the Jets, Ethan. You and I did it together. We did it with that great group. Sure, there was a lot of philosophy, but at the end of the day, we were winning awards and doing great work. They still are. You still are. So there's a lot of work to be done on people, and to do that together is powerful.
I'm going to challenge you because I think that yeah, I know you welcome it. Stereotypically, I think there's this connotation around people who are in high, powerful positions, just like it's a result driven world, right? I think there are people like yourself who care about the people to make the world a better place. But then there are also people who are like, as long as the work gets done, I don't care what happens. I don't care how you feel. It's all result driven. How do you try to convince that person that going through the process that takes some time to self reflect and then change the way that they lead, just like from a systematic perspective and a philosophical perspective? How do you go about trying to infiltrate their process?
Great question. And I deal with that fairly often. I would ask them a couple of things. What do you want your leadership legacy to be? So here's the reality of those types of folks, right? And we're not in judgment here. We're in education. We're in development, right? It's never in judgment. But I would ask, what do you want your legacy to be? Here's the reality. If you're a CEO, a president, an SVP, an EVP, a director, whatever, the reality is you're a caretaker of that position. At some point, you're going to need to move on. You're going to either get a higher job at another company and move on, or you're going to be fired or laid off, or something bad, unfortunately, will happen. At that point in time, your leadership legacy will follow you. It will go wherever you go. What do you want that leadership legacy to be? When you're out of the room, what are people saying about you? What do you care about? And does that matter to you when those times happen, right? Even if you retired, what does your professional eulogy look like, right? Does that matter to you? Does it matter in a practical sense? Well, if you're moving jobs, there's new ownership or there's budget cuts and you move on and you need to find another job, what are they going to do? They're going to call and ask your references and people that you worked with. What are they going to say? That is not to say that you live for the judgment and opinions of others. But like you said, if you care about people, and they could say whatever they want about you, but at the end of the day, if you cared about them, that legacy and that framing is going to be in a positive sense. The second part is probably even more powerful. And I will say this. What do Kobe Bryant, Tiger Woods, some of these legendary people that work harder than anyone else, LeBron James, Steph Curry, what do they all have in common? They're already great, but they're getting better. They have coaches. They have specialties. They have nutritionists. They have mindful coaches. They have basketball coaches, right? Baseball players with swings. Tiger Woods has redone his swing several times. They're already at the top. Why are they doing that? Because what if you're at a CEO, a golfer, a basketball player, a leader, and you're humming at 86%? What if you could go to 94? What if you're at 78 and you can go to 88? right? That's what it takes to get better. So that constant continuous learning and wanting to get better, even if you think you're doing great, why be one dimensional and just get the work done? Oh, I got the work done. We got the numbers up. Yeah, but 7 people think you're horrible. 7 people they think you're awful. What did they go? Here's the thing, Ethan. They go home thinking that about you because you don't care. So what does that mean to you? There's the whole pie there, man. And if it all ends tomorrow, it's all about how much we helped and empowered people, not about just getting the numbers.
I also think it's important that if you're in a leadership role, and to your point, you just said 7 people hate you, those people won't want to work as hard for you, which then affects the business aspect of it, which is where I think the investing in people and investing in yourself translates down the road to a more effective, efficient workplace that also gets the results. Like, I feel like, to use a sports analogy, there are some coaches who, people say, like, they don't focus on the result. They focus on their players, grooming their players into becoming better people, becoming better athletes, becoming better baseball, football, whatever the sport is, players. And in turn, when those people work hard for someone that they trust, for someone that they like, the results and the championships in this case then come. I feel like we've seen that, whether that's little league, middle school, high school, college, the professionals. Like, I feel like, and as someone who used to work in sports and still has a pulse on the sports world, both as a fan and as a consultant, I feel like that's basically your message in sports terms, is it not?
It is exactly that.
I think, just from an outsider's perspective, who's not in the leadership consulting field, I think one of the coolest things that you said, and I think really one of the most important things, is that leadership to me is consistently evolving. Just like, I feel like people my age, I'm 29, people are like, oh, back in my day and the blah, blah, blah. I feel like times change. Even from when I was a kid, times have drastically changed, but so has leadership, it feels like. And, I've only been in the professional world for 8 years now, but I do feel like hearing, stories of my parents or aunts, uncles, cousins who are older than I am, younger than I am, like, leadership just is constantly evolving. So to me, it's like a muscle. And to have someone ride shotgun, as you put it, with you to help you, to keep you up to date on the times, to have you think about things that maybe you've never thought about before, I think that's imperative to successful leadership. So that, I think that's very, very important, as just someone who doesn't really have like a horse in the race, right? Like, I am not a CEO level. Like, I am obviously in a workplace and I've been here 8 years, but I think that you can see just times change, and so does leadership. And I think that's very important. Now, with this podcast, 51 guests, right? You are the guest on 52, which is ironic, but 51 guests. And this is going to be my last question. Speaking to 51 different leaders, people that have worn many different hats, many different jobs, what are the common denominators through all 51? And furthermore, how do you try to sell those common denominators to people as like a bait on a hook?
Number 1 is listening. Number 2, self-awareness. Number 3, the overall art of communicating and not communicating. This came up over and over and over again. Not communicating how you want to communicate, communicating how you will best be heard. And then empathy came up a lot, coupled with vulnerability. So many leaders, Ethan, if I may, and this is a consistent theme from the folks that I interviewed of those 51 people, which is to say, if I have the strength and courage to be vulnerable, it will draw people in so they can show their vulnerabilities. When you're trying to mask up or be something you're not, or have false bravado, it gets in the way of overall camaraderie. And it goes back to that percentage equation that I have. If you're humming along and you're thinking, man, we're getting numbers, we're doing good work, we're in the profit mark, whatever the metrics are for your individual business, but you're not seeing vulnerability, and you know that there's barriers and there's communication lapses, and you could feel the tension when the whole group is in their meeting, and you're not really sharing openly, and people don't feel like they're themselves, how good can you be? I'm being bullish again, and I'm aware of that. That's my self-awareness. I know I get rolling on these things, but bear with me here. So if you couple the listening, and if you pay attention and truly listen to somebody, what does that mean? That means not listen to argue, not listen to just express your point. Truly take them in and listen, and then base your response on that listening. You have a formula that works to bring diverse opinions, diverse people into the mix. Truly caring what the intern says, not just the SVP. The intern's there for a reason. You never know where a good idea is going to come from.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't. Those are the common themes that I've seen throughout the year, which is listen, express yourself, and welcome everyone in, to put it in a nutshell.
Well, on that note, Gargs, you've been a wonderful guest on your own podcast. I hope you have a wonderful start of the 2024 year, and I'm excited to see what you do in the 2024 year, just as on your own year two. You now have a better understanding of the space, a better understanding of how you'd like to accomplish what you'd like to do, and now it's go time. But it's not about what you do in January. Just like a New Year's resolution, I'm going to bring it full circle. It's not about what you do for 2 weeks in January. It's about what you're doing 12 months from now, or really 11 and a half months from now, around Christmas of December 2024.
Ethan, I can't thank you enough for doing this. This is a wonderful idea. You're a great friend, a great former colleague, and I will see you soon. This has been tremendous. This is a gift, and I thank you. And we thank Ethan very much for hosting the show. He did a fantastic job, and I appreciate it. Okay, couple of takeaways. Continuous learning, a theme that we just discussed, Ethan and I, and we discuss all the time on this podcast. Why is it important to be a continuous learner? What does continuous learning look like for you, for people that are listening to this podcast? It could be reading, meditating, taking in podcasts, talking to mentors about what it takes to create a great culture and to be a better leader, an open-minded leader, a leader with a growth mindset. Understanding each individual person. As I say all the time, and again, I don't mean to sound bullish, this takes work. Think about it. You can't walk into an organization and just say, okay, I'm just going to deal with things as they happen, right? Leadership needs a plan, a structure. How do I deal with things? And it goes back to values and everything that we just talked about on this podcast. It's monumentally important. And then the final takeaway is also what Ethan and I talked about, which is to say, that if you have a foundation of caring for people and creating trust and developing people, the results will come. It's not the other way around. That is my personal opinion. That is the experience that I have seen after all these years of studying leadership, is that if you start with caring, developing people, and impacting them positively, the results will come. Again, I am bullish on that. And that's where we'll end it this week, everybody. We'll have a great guest for you next week on Keep the Line Moving. Have a great week yourselves, everybody. And again, Happy New Year. Every week you hear guests on this podcast talk about some of their biggest leadership challenges. As a leader, you want to make an impact on those you lead and reach your organization's goals, while also optimizing your time management. Wherever you are in your leadership journey, we could all use some help. This is what we focus on with our group and individual coaching services. To book a call or get more information, email me directly at chrisg@garganoleadership.com or visit our website at garganoleadership.com. For our podcast and video producer, Jack Radutsky, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwhal, have a great week, everybody.